Hello and welcome or welcome back to Flosstube with the Stitching Owl. Would you believe I'm going to say it is September 1 already? Where did our summer go? As I watch the Flosstubes of our seasoned veterans, we're finding that most people are saying, wow, I didn't get as much stitching done in the last couple of weeks as I wanted to. And indeed, I'm going to tell you the same thing. Now, there have been many different reasons that people have provided, and I am thrilled that people whose hobby keeps them pretty much inside are going outside more, spending time with the family, having a moment for vacation. There's so many great reasons to not get as much stitching time in August. For me, I am a retiring musician. I say retiring because I'm not quite retired yet. This coming year, I'm still going to have about 6 hours a week of teaching time, which of course means I'm going to have 6 to 12 hours of marking and prep time. So I'm not retired yet. It is a private studio. I have been teaching almost 50 years. This year, my focus is actually pedagogy as I teach some of my more advanced students how to teach. The other area that I am particularly enamored with is something that surprises most people: theory. I love theory of music. Yeah, I am an eccentric musician, aren't I? I'm okay with that. So I am actually hired by the Royal Conservatory in Toronto, Ontario, to mark exams, and there's 3 exam periods in the year for the written exams. The summer school exam period is in August, and then they ship me, this time it was 140 3-hour exams, and I marked them in an 8-day period. Those 8 days did not see much stitching at all. And I came out of it with a bit of a sore arm and shoulder because I tend to be a little bit focused and tense as I mark. Indeed, I am finding that students who are very used to typing constantly are having a harder time being neat when they have to meet a pencil and a piece of paper. And I certainly wish that people would take a pencil sharpener with them to their exams. Some of those papers were almost unreadable. But I'm also thrilled to say that there were some that were truly inspiring, and I had a couple that were like 96, which is really high when you consider that I'm marking exams that are equivalent to first and second year university. And sometimes these are children that are as young as 11 and 12 years old taking these exams. So my life is actually, in the past, has been completely about music with a little bit of making to make myself happy. And one of the thrills this year is that the hours will start to even out, that I'll have hopefully as much time for sewing and stitching as I have for studio time, and that at the end of this coming year that I'll be ready to retire or have just maybe one family left. So that's why I didn't get as much stitching done, but you know, let's see what did happen. So before we go farther, I just want to say a very big thank you to Laura of Stitching by the Shore for the shout out she gave me. I noticed that more people came by to have a peek at what I was doing after she shouted me out, and I truly appreciate that. I would also like to take this moment to say I'd like to shout out Lisa Lost in Stitches, whose her journey has been particularly touching to me, and I encourage, if you haven't visited Lost in Stitches, for you to have a peek at her. Her stitching is exquisite. She is a Canadian like me, but not in the same province. And certainly I'm in southern Ontario, and I believe she's in Edmonton, which is definitely colder than I am a good chunk of the year. She has been having a bit of a struggle with breast cancer, and I continue to keep her in my thoughts and prayers. My mother has survived it twice, and I hope for Lisa the same thing that has happened in my family, that even though my mother did have it twice before the age of 50, she's still with us at the age of 89. So one of the things that I want to do through this particular floss tube is to send a smile. So each time I have a floss tube, I will send at least one smile out to somebody out there. And I did send one of my ornaments. You got the idea from my very first floss tube video that I love to make ornaments, and I love to share them with people that understand the love and care that goes into making those. That's what my Send a Smiles will be. So I did send one to Lisa, and I sent one to Laura as well. At this point, I am reaching out to Flosstubers through the emails that they make available in the notes on their floss tubes to ask for their addresses so I can send them a smile. Now, you will find below that there is my email address as well, the Stitching Owl. Notice the dots. I would love to be able to send an ornament to people that are all over the world. I'm going to keep track of where I have sent these because I would like to send a smile to as many places as I can. Now, speaking of ornaments, most months I've had a plethora to actually be quite happy with, and this was one of the areas that suffered in the last 2 weeks. Yes, indeed. I was able, in the month of August, I only got 3 done, and my minimum is typically 4. My maximum so far has been 14 in the same month, and I did that 2 months this year. So last floss tube, I showed you my owl. That was one of the owls from the Owl Forest Embroidery free pattern. This pair of, I guess it'd be 16 days, I finished 2 ornaments. I think of him as a Christmas. He's a Christmas moose. And then here is Christmas fox. Now, these are ornaments that are Nikki patterns on Etsy. This guy, the fox, is on 25 count pewter, 1/1. And this guy is on ivory hardanger, 1/1. So they are the same amount of stitches, but you can see the difference in 22 and 25 count. I like my ornaments to be about the size of my hand and sometimes smaller. So one of the things that happens with me and my ornaments is I actually pick the material that's going to make them be the correct size for my personal taste. They're also easier to mail if they're 4 inches or smaller. So those were my 2 ornaments for the past couple of weeks. Now, fully finishes, I did manage a few fully finishes. The last time we were together, showed you all of the pieces to the Woof Block. Now, Woof Block is a pattern by Hands On Design, and it was part of my Do Something New, the initiative that was set out by the Colorado Cross Stitcher as part of her summer camp 2023. And I got him done. Isn't he cute? Now, it's surprising how much polyfill fits into one of these things. The only thing that I did different than the instructions that she had, her instructions are absolutely exquisite, when it came to the join here, I did not put a line of stitching on the outside to whip stitch closed. I wanted to try to make these meet as closely as possible to just be a continuous picture. So I used a quilting stitch on the inside that is actually quite firm, because you end up doing a double stitch all the time because you're continually going back over. But you, with something like this, which was 32 count antique wood, Lugana, I was able to use the lines of stitching to actually make sure I was lining things up really well. So I didn't end up with a line there, but everything else was exactly the same. Now, I think he's very cute, and I'm ready to do another one. Yes, she has quite a few of these designs out, and I haven't decided which one will be next. My daughter loves cats, but I know that my sister and sister-in-law would love the pincushions that are covered with sewing items. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. So that was fully finished number 1. Now, at the last video, one of the things that I said was that each month I wanted to pick out 2 new designers to explore a pattern of. I'm not sure I'm going to always get them finished in the month, but I want to actually explore them. So I wanted one of them to be on Etsy and one of them to just be on the web. So I decided I was going to try a modern folk embroidery pattern. And I have to admit that when I look on Jacob's website, I am absolutely gobsmacked at the exquisiteness of his designs and the size of his patterns. So I just was overwhelmed, to be quite honest. So I decided that I would take a little bit of the easier way out, and I started with his Biscornu, so that you could download this pattern and you got 8 Biscornu. And in that way I was getting a taste of Jacob's handiwork on a smaller scale. Now, I can honestly say I've been bitten by the Jacob bug. I'm going to be looking up a bigger pattern. These are so much fun to make. Wow. So, how many did I get done? Not all 8, I promise you. The first one that I got done, I was able to make into a Biscornu. Now, on the back, I didn't do a full pattern. I just created a little triangle there that you would see. And then I'm fortunate that my mother asked me whether I wanted her button box. So I inherited hundreds of buttons. And I love it because I can actually go in and find things that there was only one of these, but that's okay. I only needed one for the top. So this particular one, let's see if I can figure it out. Oh, okay. So if you look at this, it is the center triangle. Wow, I don't know my geometry, do I? It's a square in there. Now, I didn't do them in a single monochrome. I did 2 colors. And one of the things that I also did is on 32 count Murano green Lugana, I used sulky thread. I've wanted to try out sulky thread, and I'm somebody who doesn't do many things in 14 count. But I thought, well, 32 equals 16 count, so perhaps that would be lovely. And I must say, it was wonderful. Let's see if I can show you. The X's lie really quite nicely because it's only a single strand, but the depth of color is there because the thickness of the thread is equal to 2 strands of DMC, or almost 2 strands. So like when you look right here, that is really solid coverage in there, and that was only 2 X's right next to each other. So I have to admit, I do like the sulky. So I did one Biscornu. I did the center of one more of these. Let me see. So this guy right here. And this time I decided to make an Ort tray. Now this was the first time I'd made an Ort tray, and I learned a lot. I did put quilt batting in there, and I discovered that if I did that, my corners were too thick to put snaps on so that I could just lay this flat and then snap it up into this position. So this particular Ort tray is going to stay in this shape permanently, and I'm going to try another one of these and do the innards a little bit differently and hope to make it so that we can have snaps so that it can lie flat in somebody's luggage, but then come up into this shape when they need something to place their tiny set of scissors, their Ort, whatever they want to. But again, this was sulky thread, and I used 2 colors only. I don't know whether they were supposed to be blueberries, but I made them into blueberries and enjoyed every one of these stitches. This was still 32 count, but this was Stormy Night Lugana. So I was able to fully finish 2 items out of those Biscornu patterns. And I've now finished all of my fully finished items for the last 2 weeks. I did not get more fully finished done. I did finish one more of the Biscornu, and it is the complete pattern. And I'm not fully sure what I'm going to make this into yet. I feel like it might be a little bit big for the kind of Biscornu that I normally do. And I'm running out of the material that's the back. So we'll see on my next floss tube what this becomes. So one of the things that I love about things that are fully finished is that they are first in line to get fully finished for the next time because they were a finish here. I'm not sure I said that right. If I finish them now, I can fully finish them in the next 2 weeks. So what else did I finish in this period of time? Well, I did want to do some more ornaments. And I happen to like the patterns of Doreen Jones, who is an Etsy designer. And she has often got some of her elements seen on Pinterest as well. And you've seen a few of her stitches done into ornaments in the past. I bought a set of 4 Halloween silhouettes, and this time I sewed them on a lovely lavender 20 count Aida. And this is how I do my stitches for ornaments. I do a lot of them all on one long piece of material, and then I cut them apart and finish them all in the same night. So that's actually how I would have gotten 4 of these. But then I decided that I didn't want to cut them apart to make them into ornaments this time. I decided that I wanted to make a block where each side of the block is a Halloween piece. I'm going to design something for the top, and then the only thing I'm going to change in the directions from my woof block is that the bottom I'm going to put a piece of mat board in, because this bottom, I filled him so full of polyfill that he doesn't really sit flat. He sort of balances. And I'd like the bottom to be flatter, so I wanted to try it on something else before I did the next woof block. Now these silhouettes are supposed to be completely in black, but I picked one element to do in another color. So in the first one, the witch, the moon, I put in, I think that was the B5300 bright white. Ada, this is all, by the way, 310. I have a cone of 310. The coverage with one strand over one is actually very good. You don't see the back through the black. The next one, the pumpkin, the thing that I chose was the leaves of the pumpkin to be in a color, and that was steamed broccoli. The little tombstones, I picked the spider's web and then the whiskers and eyes of the cat. And again, that was one strand of B5200. And then for the ghost, this is, I think, 677 for DMC for the stars, and the rest of it was black. So I'm very happy with the coverage. You can see that I chose a color, I can't remember which mauve that I finally picked. I pulled a whole bunch of them and then just decided which one was going to go around so that I can whip stitch these shut. I better look that up so that I whip stitch them in the correct color, hey? So I'm hoping that next time I will have a fully finish of a block with all of these and then a surprise top. When it comes to the top of blocks, one of the things I liked about this block is that from all angles, you saw something right side up. So I want to create a top for this that likewise is either just all circular, so there is no right side up or wrong side up, or that there's a pattern that I have created in the 4 different directions. I haven't stitched that yet, so we'll have to wait and see how that one goes. And on to the next page. That means I'm 2 whips, and I've really only got 2 to show you. One of them is a continuation from last time, and that's the Nenny Designs Flamingo Stocking. So this, what you'll notice is different from last time is that I got this candle, which seems to be floating in the water, and the Christmas present, which is floating in the water and that was all that I got in this past 2 weeks of the stocking. So I'm hoping that this one will get further in the next couple of weeks. I do stockings, I do Sunday stocking, which means that it's only 1 day a week I'm putting into this, but sometimes Sunday is the day of rest and I get a good amount of time to stitch, and so that has most weeks resulted in lots of stitching, but this past week it was marking. So that was my first whip. And then my second whip, okay, well, I printed this out, but I cannot see it. Oh, there it is. So I made another waxing moon purchase. This is a 2023 design, and I believe it's called Fall Autumn Barn Trio. I just think these are so cute, and I wanted to stitch them up as ornaments, but then I also wanted to see if there was any parts of them that could be made into trading cards for the October 1 deadline for Laura at Stitching by the Shore. So we'll see. I'll have to play around with it because these are full coverage barns and they are bigger than they look. So when I just tried to figure out what size of fabric that I needed to do. I almost couldn't figure out what that word was. I went to 22 count to make it so that this would be the correct size in my mind. So this is what I did in the last 3 days. Isn't it adorable? I love the fact that there is a quilt square on the barn. One of the things that my husband and I like to do when we are traveling around, particularly as we go towards the Windsor and Chatham area, we don't hop onto the main highway 401. We go more back routes, and the barns have quilt squares on them, and I like to count them and see if I can name all of the quilt squares. So I think that it is really cool that this has what looks a little bit like a sawtooth star on it. And then those are quilt squares beneath that as well. And these are fall colored trees. So I have this piece of material like I did the Doreen Jones. I've got enough here to actually plan out the other two and do them before I cut them apart to actually fully finish them into ornaments. So one of the things that I do is each week when I visit my mother, I change the ornament. I've put an ornament holder on top of her piano. Very musical household. Everybody's got a piano. And my brother and sister are music teachers also. It was a noisy household. So I change this each week so that she's got something that is a little bit new to look at, but that she's not accumulating anything because she's at the time where she's trying to give everything away. So that's one of the things that I am doing. So those are my two whips. Now, off the wall. What I took off the wall today is a cross stitch that was not completed by me. One of the things that I have done over the years is I have allowed people to know that I will come in with as little as 1 hour's notice to play a church service on a Sunday morning. And for a long period of time, I had about 8 churches that I knew their services well enough that I could walk in and do it. Well, one of the churches was without a musician for about 2 years. And the search was definitely on. I didn't want to take it on permanently, but I did say that I would take it on for that period of time until they found someone. And as on the last day of my playing, one of the ladies who I knew had there was a cross stitcher in the soprano section. We could talk cross stitch. This is what they gave me. The crew paid for it to be framed, and the soprano stitched it for me. And when you look at this, all of these are words that have to do with music. The musical alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, that's your C major scale. And there's minor, there's chords, there's notes, flats, sharps, score, everything here. And when you look in here, those are all music notes and rests with little hearts. And then Roundtree Memorial United Church she put in so that I would forever, not that I could forget them, but I have had that up in my studio since that period of time. It's been years, but that is such a precious gift. I've never seen that pattern when I've been out in shops. I've often wondered if there was a bass clef as well. But truly, isn't it special when somebody does something like that for you? Oh, so special. So that was my off the wall. Now, something that you have not heard me say in the past videos is the word haul. And the reason why is that I tend to not go very often, and then when I go, I spend quite a bit of money. So I had not been to the store all summer, but I did have a gift certificate from one of my children. My local needlework shop has a point system that when you spend a certain amount of money, you get $20 off your next purchase, which means that because I spend a fair amount of money each time that I go, because they sell quilting as well as sewing stuff, I get $20 off the next time. It happens every single time. So I did go and I made some purchases. So with regards to patterns, I did purchase my first Plum Street patterns. And so I've got Polar Pack, which is polar bears that are stacked up. They have a stacked series here. I'm trying to get my hands on Corgi Caboodle. I think I can put these on a 25 count and make them into ornaments, or I could put them onto something bigger and have all sorts of fun with them. So I also got Goat Load. Now, I had managed to somehow miss over the times in the spring that I was out shopping, getting the Christmas Tiny Town. So when I found it, I grabbed it. And one of the things that I definitely wanted to purchase, yes, you guessed it, the Halloween ornaments. There are so many ornaments in here that I think are well worth doing. I'm not going to take a moment to look through this. If you have not seen this particular book, Carolyn Zook has done a flip through. And it's absolutely amazing. There's more than 50 in here, and it's well worth the purchase each year. They didn't have the Christmas one yet, or you would have seen me purchasing that. I will have to go back for that for sure. Now, what else did I buy there? Well, because I fell in love with sulky threads, I purchased a whole bunch of sulky threads. So I got probably a dozen more of the tiny spools, and then I got white and black in bigger spools. There's more yards on these ones. I think that the sulky black is the answer, in my opinion, when you're trying to get really good coverage and you're not doing 20, 22, or 25 count, and you're feeling like DMC isn't cutting it. And I'm noticing some of the people are going, well, Anchor does it for me, but it doesn't do it for everyone. Try sulky. It really, it's quite amazing. So I am going to do Halloween Tiny Town in sulky thread and have some fun with that. My last drum was done in DMC. So one of the things that I want to see is to see what the difference is in the look. Because I find that the sulky is a very saturated look, even though it's only one thread. And it's really 3D. You really feel the stitches. Yeah, it's really cool. So I'm looking forward to that. I bought 2 pieces of material, which I didn't actually bring down to show you. One was a yard of dark blue 18 count Aida. It's not mottled, it's just dark blue. And the reason that I bought that is I am going to join into the whole idea of BAP. So BAP, I'm going to rephrase it slightly, is a big art project. Now you might hear it said a different way. I was brought up by, my grandmother lived in the house, and I still can't change all of the ways that I was taught to speak. And so it's a big art project. And you can guess that because I am the Stitching Owl, I picked an owl as my big project. Now this is my Etsy, my new Etsy, and it is Shirova Creations. Now, I'm going to tell you that this particular pattern is really amazing. First of all, they had a sale on, so there was 20% off. I don't think it's on anymore. I think I got it in the last 10 hours. When I purchased this pattern, I got it in 4 different ways. You can make it 300 by 300, 400 by 400, 500 by 500, or 600 by 600. And each different size has a different amount of colors that go with it. And of course, as you get to bigger, there are more gradations included. So I thought that that was really, really a good buy, that for about $14, I got 4 different sizes of a pattern that is going to be like, I think this was 9 pages of solid, like, yeah. I'm really looking forward to doing it. Now, my daughter was with me, and I said, would you help me pull the DMC for my BAP? And she looked at me, she says, don't you have some of these colors? And I said, yes, but I want to be able to make a container that is just for the BAP, that I don't want to be stealing from one project to another and then finding that I'm just without, or there is some sort of change. So I have my DMC. She was absolutely amazed. She actually said, are you really going to use all of that? And I said, there's going to be some skeins that we don't use the whole skein for sure. As a matter of fact, many of them we won't use the whole skein, but there might be some that I have to come back for more. So I wanted 20 count in navy blue, and my L&S was out of it. And like, they had a fat quarter, but a fat quarter, one side was 18 inches, and that's not big enough because I want a good 3 to 4 inches on each side of this. It just means that it's easier for me to work with in the hoop. So I did get the 18 count dark blue. But I'm going to have to do a little bit of testing on the edge, because I don't know whether 1/1 is going to be satisfactory for saturation. And I don't personally tend to enjoy the 2/1 in 18. I know many people do, and it looks fabulous. I just find that when you're going to be changing colors as often as we are going to be on this kind of a project, that it's getting too thick. So I really wanted 20 count, so it'd be 1/1. So I'll test and see whether or not I've got the right piece of material. And if I don't, I will try and order one in. Or one of my other thoughts was that the hardanger comes in a 60-inch wide because it's for table runners and things like that. I could take a chunk of it and do my first dye job. So that was the other option that I might consider doing, because I find 22 count hardanger just as easy to stitch on as 20 count Ada is. And the other piece of material I got was for another stocking. I initially was going to kit that one up, but then I could see that my daughter was like looking at me like, you can't believe how many flosses this is. And then when I was checking out, they actually had to run each floss individually under their scanner. So it took quite a while for me to go through the checkout. So I did not kit up my other one. And if I go to Michael's and get as much there as I can, I'm of that certain age that they give me a discount because I'm a senior citizen. So I can do it a little bit cheaper there. So I did some definite damage. And I also bought my daughter some yarn. She loves to crochet. And she's a little bit fascinated with this whole idea that I'm doing Flosstube and my stitching. So she said, is there anything here that would be a good first project? So we got a little circular bee, and she's going to try cross stitching, and I'll let you know how that goes. I'm hoping it goes well because I would love to have my daughter doing Flosstube with me. I'm sure you will see her with her crochet at some point, but I'd love her to do stitching as well. Now, the last thing on my list was one of the things that has been a little bit unusual is over the last couple of weeks as I watch YouTube in the middle of the night and can't concentrate to do much marking. That's when I would do the stitching. I am the owl. I'm wondering if anybody else has had this situation where they go to make a comment on somebody, but either the comments aren't there at all, or twice in the past 2 weeks, it wouldn't let me load in a comment at all. It froze. The video kept going just as normal, but I couldn't make a comment. And I was really sad in one case because I was watching somebody that it was Flosstube #1, and it looked like they hadn't had any comments. And I'm wondering if everybody had the problem that they couldn't comment. It's so nice when you've got somebody who's a new Flosstuber to have that comment come up, because you just feel so much joy out of being able to interact with somebody else, even though it's sort of just online. So that was one of the frustrations that I had. One of the other frustrations I had was that I did comment with somebody who said they were showing in their video some beautiful kits for making felt ornaments. Yes, ornaments again, it's me. And she said, but it's so sad because I'm never quite getting around to doing it. And I wrote back, let's do a felt along. And she said, yes, let's do a felt along. But I forgot to grab her email in that moment. And do you think I can find those comments ever again? So if you're watching this video, can you please comment? It was me that wanted to do a felt along, and we will get this going. For instance, this is a set of 6 ornaments that, let me see. This is how far I've got one of them, but I would like to get all 6 done. I also have purchased these little stockings that are really cute felt stockings. And I know another barn. My father was a gifted photographer. He didn't do it for a living because he said it would be no fun, but he particularly loved to find barns that had obviously been around for many years and take pictures of them as the light was coming up in the morning. So we'd get up really early and go and find, he would have scouted out his barn ahead of time. And then as the light came through the missing slats in the walls, we would be taking our pictures. So barns are particularly, they speak to me because I miss my father. It hasn't been a year yet since we've lost him, and it would have been nice to still be able to do that with him. So, yes, so if you were the one that I commented, yes, let's do a felt along, please shout out so that we can make a choice as to how we're going to do that and what our time frame is. And then the last thing that I just personally, I would love to be making actual links in my notes below. I am putting the information below. There is a series of steps that I'm going through, and then I'm supposed to take a picture. And it keeps saying there can only be one person in the picture. It's only me and a wall. And YouTube is telling me it's not just me. So until that YouTube acknowledges that it's just me and the wall, you're going to have the information below, but it won't be true links. I will keep working with that to see whether we can get that going. And that is it today. Well, for not getting much stitching done, I was able to chatter for a while, wasn't I? But I think it's because I love the topic, because making makes me happy. So I hope that you can go make something and make yourself happy. Goodbye for now.